Hello and welcome to week 8 in the psychology of personality. And here we are moving away from the somewhat philosophical ways in which we've been approaching personality into a bit more rigid and structured way of approaching personality, and that is an introduction to trait theories. Now, traits is an interesting aspect of the whole world of psychology because it contrasts with another word that we use in psychology, and that's states. So you have traits and states, and it's important to make a distinction between those, particularly when it comes to how we think about personality. So we may, or you may, have encountered the discussions in your various psychology classes of emotional states or states of consciousness. And what that word states mean is these particular aspects of human behavior are what we would call volatile. And that's not violent. They're volatile, meaning they change rapidly, or they can change rapidly. You know that we can fall asleep, we can be very alert, we can be very tired, we can be in a state of hunger, we can be thirsty, all of these states of consciousness that we can be in, and they can rapidly move from one place to another. Equally, in our emotional states, we can be going along really happy, and then somebody says something really harsh to us, and we can feel hurt very quickly. We can move our emotional state to another place very quickly. We use the word traits when we talk about personality because we are making the decision that personality doesn't change, at least doesn't change rapidly. Our personality doesn't move like our emotions. Our ability to manage emotions in particular situations such as stress may be a function of our personality, but our personality is basically stable. So the field is then able to say, well, what are the different ways in which our personality expresses itself? And important psychologists have come along with what we would call trait theories. And when we think of personality most of the time, and we say that person is very kind, or that person is very angry, well, that's not a good one, but that person is egotistical, or the person's intelligent, or the person's really good in relationships, or they have a nice personality, or something like that. We're often talking, I'm trying not to use any of the name of traits in there, and it is difficult to do. We're often talking about trait psychology, pieces of that person's personality that we can identify, and they have high or low on those particular traits. Lots of theories. In fact, one of the theories that you're being exposed to, which is called the Big Five, is actually a result of a meta-analysis that was done on personality trait theories. So researchers put together research that was done by other people that came to conclusions about sets of traits that individuals have that we align with the term personality. And what they found out is these 5 seem to appear in all of them. So the Big 5 trait theory is, and in this case, I give you a test to take. The Big 5 trait theory, those 5 personality traits are the most common and most popular traits when it comes to all the different trait theories. I also introduced you to a personal favorite of mine, and that's the work of Raymond Cattell, and Cattell's 16 personality factors. Personality factors, personality traits, same thing. You get to take each one of those tests. Now, as we're going into those tests, and I'm having you take the Big 5 and the 16 PF, I want you to understand what this is for. These are not diagnostic tests. You can disagree with them, you can agree with them, you could whatever. This is self-exploration. So the point of this is not to pigeonhole you, but to simply reflect and say, okay, people put this test together to measure all of these different traits, and I measured here on it. And well, why did I measure like that on that? Does that ring true to me? Does it ring false to me? But then if it rings false to me, is it teaching me something that maybe there are times, let's say the times that are identified in the test, where I'm not like that, that there's circumstances that I can be in that actually change the way I express my personality. And that kind of gives you a dynamic way to get the most out of that test. Now that changing component, that ability for us that we act certain ways under certain circumstances that may be not typical of our normal way of living and our personality, but under certain circumstances, that aspect of our personality consistently arises. So let's say during the normal day, I'm a very confident, together person. But if I experience critique, there's a part of my personality I'm not really proud about that comes out defensive. So as much as my personality is stable across most situations, it's also stable in sort of a negative way that, when I'm being critiqued, I might get more defensive. And there's this aspect of my personality that is consistent, so it is a trait, but it only comes out under certain circumstances. You might see the opposite. You might see someone who just, is kind of just a normal individual going along and whatnot, but under certain circumstances, they can arise to be a leader. Those aspects of leadership in their personality, which lay dormant all that time, and yet circumstances came along and that individual rose to the occasion. We see those as, let's say, personality traits that they weren't aware of until circumstances demanded them. Now that sort of relates, after you've done that discussion, the assignment is actually to look at another theory, and that's the theory of Gordon Alport. And I give you a list of traits. He just has tons and tons of traits. But what his method, different than the Big Five, different than the 16 PF, was we can have all kinds of traits, but we organize them into 3 categories. And I want you to look through all those traits and select traits that fit in each one of these categories. You don't have to fit them all, but you have to take the ones that you feel are the most relevant to 3 categories. First, cardinal traits. This is the base of who you are. If you want somebody to know you, they would have to know these particular traits. They're very important to you. They're a core to your identity. The next one is central traits. These are important. You'd want them on your resume. You'd want people to know, but they're not as important as the core ones. So that's a little bit of a distinction there. The ones that are really who I am, and the ones that they are who I am, but they're not. They're just central. They're just important for me when it comes to what I want people to know about me and whatnot. The cardinal ones are self-identity. That's where I get my sense of self. The next one is secondary traits. So you have cardinal, central, and secondary traits. Secondary traits are like those ones that I just talked about. They only come up in certain circumstances. And you can find those. And I want the paper is to basically write out a selection of your cardinal traits, a selection of your central traits, and a selection of your secondary traits. And so that's the assignment to get. So you're kind of getting exposed in the assignments, you're getting exposed to 3 different models of trait theory. Now, we're heading to the end of this week, and next week is spring break. At least it is at KV. I hope it is with you folks, because I'm out of the country. So next week you have off. And I hope that you take the opportunity to do no classwork, if this coincides, at least no classwork for me, and take a break from the work, refresh yourself, come back in week 10, we skip over week 9, and ready to go for the last third of the class as we venture toward the end of this class. So I wish you have a good week this week. I'm looking forward to those assignments. And those assignments won't be graded necessarily until I come back on week 10. So I ask for some patience on that. And have a great week. It looks like the weather might be turning warm. And so be well, and I will see you the next time. Have a great week.